Phrasal verbs are so difficult for non-native English speakers to learn, the main reason being because you can't really get what they mean based through context. The phrasal verb look into, for example, doesn't mean that you are physically looking in something. But don't worry, I know they can be hard to learn, but today I'm going to walk you through my advanced list of phrasal verbs and use my favorite methods to teach them to you. We're going to go over 21 advanced phrasal verbs and their definitions, whether they are separable or inseparable, and give you examples and quizzes along the way. These specific phrasal verbs on this list are very important if you're looking to get a job, work at a company, take your TOEFL test, or just sound more like a native speaker. So let's get into it. First, a word about phrasal verbs. If you know a bit about phrasal verbs, you know it takes a verb and a particle to make a phrasal verb. For example, if we have the verb take and then the particle off, put them together, we have the phrasal verb take off. Phrasal verbs can be separable or inseparable, depending on whether you can put something in between the verb and the particle or not. With separable phrasal verbs, you can put something in between the verb and the particle, but with inseparable verbs, you cannot. For example, in the sentence, look the word up. Look up is a separable phrasal verb. There is something in between it. Another example is, you should look into the matter. The phrasal verb here is look into, and it's inseparable. You cannot put something between it. Now that we've covered the basics, let's move on to actually learning those 21 phrasal verbs that I have for you. First, we have adhere to. To adhere to means to obey. For example, you adhere to the rules, and it's inseparable. You adhere to something. You don't adhere something to. Something you might hear when you're signing a contract, for example, is you must adhere to all of the terms in the contract. You must obey all of them. Next, we have allude to. When you allude to something, you mention something in an indirect way. When something is indirect, it's talked about in a non-straightforward way. For example, she kept alluding to our agreement, but she didn't specifically bring it up. Oh, and this phrasal verb is also inseparable. I am a very direct person, so I really don't like when people allude to things. I just want them to tell it to me directly. Next, we have account for, which means to explain the reason for something. For example, if you say something like, increased pollution may account for climate change, you're saying that the pollution is the possible reason for the climate change. And this phrasal verb is inseparable too.
The findings were published in the journal Nature in 2006, where scientists concluded that this kind of disturbance in the temporal lobes may account for some paranormal events.
Next, we have bring on, which means to cause something bad to happen.
Getting a bad grade, losing a job, having an argument, even a rainy day can bring on feelings of sadness.
So yeah, not the happiest phrasal verb. This phrasal verb is commonly used when you have an illness. For example, it was his lack of exercise that brought his heart condition on. Now, from that last example, do you think that this phrasal verb is separable or inseparable? It is separable, since you can place other words between brought and on. Let's bring up another phrasal verb. When you bring something up, it means to start discussing a subject, like I literally just did. I personally use this phrasal verb all the time. Maybe you bring up an issue at a work meeting, or you bring up a solution to a problem. For example, she brought the matter up very late, so they didn't have enough time to discuss it properly. Now, based on that sentence, is bring up separable or inseparable? It is actually separable. You can place something between bring and up. Next, we have come about, which means to happen, especially by chance. By chance in this definition means accidentally, without planning. For example, I could say that some of my best ideas come about by chance. Like, for example, maybe you just wake up one morning and you want to get bangs, and you get the bangs and you love them. It just came about. And this phrasal verb is inseparable. All right, let's do a quick quiz to review everything that I have taught you so far. First, what is wrong with this sentence? I adhere this to all of the terms in the contract. Adhere to is inseparable, so you can't put anything between it. Therefore, the sentence should be, I adhere to all of the terms in the contract. Second, which phrasal verb is separable? The answer is indeed bring up. Great job, you guys. Let's keep going with some more phrasal verbs. Here we have cut back, and when we cut back on something, we reduce something. Reduce in this definition means to make smaller or lessen. One time I tried to cut back on eating sugar because I was eating so much sugar, you guys. And I actually felt a lot better after doing it. In more professional English, you might hear something like this. They are cutting back expenses. This means they are reducing expenses. And this phrasal verb is inseparable. Here we have do without. And when you do without something, you succeed in living or working without something. For example, if you're working on a class project and someone wants to know if you need any help with it, you can say, we can do without help from you, but thank you. And this phrasal verb is inseparable. Next, we have embark on. And when I think of this phrasal verb, I think of going on a journey, because when you embark on something, you start a new project or activity, usually one that will be difficult or take time. A good example for this in a more professional setting is after graduating from university, she embarked on a career in banking. Embark on is also inseparable. Next, we have follow through. And when you follow through on something, you continue doing it until it has been completed. For example, if I was in a class, I could say something like, I need to follow through on all of my assignments if I want to pass this class. This phrasal verb is also, you guessed it, inseparable. I know phrasal verbs can be so hard for you guys to learn when there's nothing you can really do but memorize it, right? But I've actually found that FluentU makes it really easy to get these words in your head with their definitions and everything. I think it's better if I show you what I mean. So let's use FluentU to learn the next phrasal verb on our list. Our phrasal verb is get across. And if you're using FluentU to learn this, the first thing you're going to want to do is look up the definition on FluentU by going to the top search bar and typing get across. The phrase should come up with the definition, which is to communicate successfully. You can also listen to or read the two examples that go along with it, which are, he struggled to get his meaning across, and I couldn't get across what I wanted to say. You can also see that the phrasal verb is separable since it separates in the first example sentence. Next, you can watch a video example of it being used in real life so you can get more context.
I don't think I can get across on camera what it's like to stand underneath these things.
And last but not least, you can add it to a flashcard set that will actually quiz you on the phrasal verb. Now, because I want to help you with this more than just through this video, I have a link for you to use FluentU in the description below. You can use it for free with the link, so go practice some phrasal verbs, get them in your head, and start sounding smarter. Our next phrasal verb is frown upon. When you frown upon something or someone frowns upon something, it means that they do not approve of it. They do not like it. Let's say you're in class and your teacher is explaining the rules of the class. He or she might say, failure to attend this class is frowned upon. This phrasal verb is also inseparable. Next, we have get around. And when something gets around, it means that it is heard by a lot of people.
I just told Bill, he's my best friend.
And I told Harry, he's father number 3. I told many people.
Rumors and news can also get around. For example, news of his promotion got around really quickly. Get around is also inseparable. Next, we have get back. And when you get back at something, it means you start doing something again after not doing it for a while. You can get back to singing, get back to working on that school project of yours, or get back to going on dates with new people after a breakup. Another example could be something like, let's get back to discussing how this happened. And this phrasal verb is inseparable. Next, we have look forward to. And when you look forward to something, it means that you're really excited about something that's going to happen in the future. If you just got a job, for example, you could say something like, I'm looking forward to working with you, to let them know that you're happy you got the job and that you get to work at that company. This phrasal verb is especially good to know because it's like an alternative, more formal way to say, I'm excited. And this phrasal verb is inseparable. Let's review everything we've discussed so far with another quick quiz. First, what phrasal verb could you use to replace the underlined part of this sentence? You need to reduce the amount of sugar that you consume. Second, what phrasal verb would you use to replace the underlined words in the sentence? I was able to communicate successfully to my boss my concerns about the workplace. Great job, everyone. Let's move on to some more phrasal verbs. So let's say that my boss asked me this. Can you look into the missing reports case and let me know what you find? Based on that example, can you guess what the phrasal verb look into means? Look into means to try to discover facts about something. And this phrasal verb is inseparable. Next we have make of. And this phrasal verb sounds kind of weird when you just say it on your own. Make of, right? But what about when it's used in this sentence? What do you make of the teacher's decision to shorten the course? Make of means to understand someone or something in a certain way. It's kind of like, what do you think of this? How do you think of this? And this phrasal verb is inseparable. Next, we have map out. And when you hear map out, you probably think of maps or creating some sort of map. When we map out something, we plan in detail what is going to happen. And this phrasal verb is separable, by the way. When I was younger, I really wanted to study abroad in Korea. So I was like, let's map out a plan of action. And I mapped out everything that I needed in order to make it happen. And then it happened. That's the power of mapping something out, my friends. Next, we have narrow down, which means to reduce the number of possibilities. If a few detectives were working on a crime, for example, I could say, the detectives narrowed down the list of suspects to just 2. And this phrasal verb is separable. Our next phrasal verb is most commonly used in work settings and it is put forward. It means to suggest an idea or opinion that you want to be discussed. In work meetings, you can put forward ideas to your boss. You may also hear your boss or team lead say something like this. The proposals were put forward last week, but the committee didn't have time to discuss them. And put forward is a separable phrasal verb. Next, we have resort to, and this is not the happiest of phrasal verbs, because when you need to resort to something, it means you need to do something unpleasant in order to solve a problem. And this phrasal verb is also inseparable. An example could be something like this. We must resort to a legal action if they don't offer compensation. The thing that they are resorting to in this sentence is legal action, which implies that they don't want to take legal action, but it might be the last option. Let's finish everything up with one more quiz that I made for you using the FluentU platform. Let's see how well you did.
Narrow down. Look into. Cut back. Follows through. Come about.
If you want to review everything that I went over in this video, be sure to download the free PDF that I made just for you guys in the description below. Now, I have the perfect video for you to check out next. My friend Fallon goes over how to learn phrasal verbs with movies. Yeah, it's amazing. And it also teaches you some of the basics. So she will see you over there for part 2 of this lesson.